This being the first Sunday of February, you should have expected it. We're going to look at the next Psalm. Today we're at Psalm 18. And I'd invite you to turn in your Bibles to that and have that ready. We'll go through that Psalm. It's a lengthy Psalm, about 50 verses, I think. And we won't be able to go into that in the detail. We go into all the Psalms, but we won't have to. And you'll see that as we get into this. And my title for this is, it's the song of an old soldier. You know, someday you're going to have to hang it up, aren't you? I've got a picture of my great-grandfather in his 80s stepping down the steps of a diesel locomotive. He was a railroad engineer, and he's climbing off that old train for the last time in his 80s when he did that. Kind of an emotional day when you get to the end of that, isn't it? Someday, Mike, you'll put in that last crop. You'll say, you know, this is it. I'm going to put this last one in. Maybe somebody else will get it out, you know, but I think this is about all I'll be able to do. Sometime, one of these days, I'll preach my last sermon. People warn old preachers, and I'm not too old yet, but old preachers, you know, you need to quit before they tell you to. Because, and my father has been concerned about that. He thinks maybe I'm doing a better job than I think I am, and he wants to quit. He tells me he's teaching his last class at the Bethany School this time. Let me tell you, it's his third last class. It's hard to stop, isn't it? You know, I like that song about the cowboy song. I'm headed for the last roundup. You take a young man, I tell you, you've got all the strength, and you're looking at your future, and you think, man, you know, 40 years, that's going to be a long time. I can do this forever. And then you wake up, and 40 years are gone. And you got to hang it up. Hard to retire, isn't it, Tony? I mean, it can be traumatic to say, man, this is what I do. This is who I am. Well, that's what this psalm is about. And we'll be able to relate to this in different ways. But particularly it's about David. You remember David, his first battle with Goliath? We sing that song, Only a Little Boy David. I think you've been talking in this class. He probably wasn't a little boy. Saul was head and shoulders above all the people. And he told David, you could have my armor. Well, he wouldn't give all that armor to a little boy. You know, David was a young man, a young shepherd lad, but a grown man when he went up against Goliath, but he wasn't skilled in battle and didn't know how to use that armor. But after that first battle with Goliath, what a story, and we tell that often, that story. David became a warrior and spent most of the rest of his life out on the battlefield in one form or another. Saul set him over the men of war. He was accepted in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. And it came to pass as they came when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistines, that the women out of the city came out of the cities of Israel singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, with instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played and said, Saul have slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Think about that as a young man. All the ladies saying, man, you are good at this. You're the hero. And it's just kind of, that's his identity. That's who he is. And David left his son Solomon a great kingdom. When David began fighting with Saul, they were harassed by the Philistines up in the hills. At the end of David's reign, he turned over his Saul a vast kingdom. He'd conquered all the enemies round about. Solomon reigned over all the kingdoms, from the river into the land of the Philistines and under the border of Egypt. And they brought presents and served Solomon all the day of his life. He had dominion over all the region on this side of the river, from Tiphsah even to Asa, over all the kings on this side of the river. And he had peace on all sides round about him. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. How was that possible? Solomon wasn't a warrior. That was David did that. Left it to his son Solomon, and for 40 years there was peace over that land because of David's prowess on the battlefield. But we read about David's last battle. And we study a lot about his first one with Goliath. He nearly got killed in the last one. And it's interesting to me that the old warrior king was fighting the son of Goliath in that last battle. It's found in 2 Samuel 21, 15 through 17. Philistine had yet war again with Israel. And David went down and his servants with him and fought against the Philistines. And David waxed faint. And Ishbi-benob, which was of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight, and he being girded with a new sword, thought to have slain David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, succored him and smote the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David sware unto him, saying, Thou shalt not go out with us to battle, that thou quench not the light of Israel. It's time for David to hang it up. He'd have to go back to that castle and take off that helmet and hang that shield up on the wall and sheathe that sword and take it off. And he goes over, and in my mind, here's what he does. He hangs that up and he takes down his harp. And he's going to sing this song. That's the song of the last soldier. Or the last song, the song of the old soldier. That's what we're going to look at. We find it in the next chapter. 2 Samuel 22 verse 1 begins like this. This is this chapter right after his last battle. And David spake unto the Lord the words of this song in the day that the Lord had delivered him out of the hand of all his enemies and out of the hand of Saul. And then for the rest of that chapter, chapter 22, we have that song. It is all but identical to the 18th Psalm. It's that song in the Psalms, and it's not just, but almost. You'd have to search. You have to search to find the differences in these two songs. And it's interesting to me that our young people like to sing this. You'll recognize these lines. It's in 2 Samuel 22. It's also in Psalm 18. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. You've heard that, haven't you? Our young people sing this. So let's look at this old song. Here's the inscription, as it's found in the King James Version. To the chief musician, a psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who spake unto the Lord the words of this song in the day that the Lord delivered him from the hands of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. And he said, now here we go. It opens with words of praise. I will love thee, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation and my high tower. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. And he sings about a time when he was in danger. The sorrows of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me. While he's in danger, he prays. In my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried unto my God. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him even to his ears. And then God comes down on the battlefield like a mighty storm. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds in the skies. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomforted them. Then the channels of the waters were seen, and the fountains of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. And in this turmoil and in this storm on this battlefield, the Lord rescued David, and David sang of his deliverance. He sent from above. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy, from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. He brought me forth also into a large place. He delivered me because he delighted in me. And David attributes his deliverance to his righteousness. We read in the book of James, the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. When David was in trouble on the battlefield as a righteous man, he prayed to God and he was delivered, and David saw that as vindication of what he had chosen and who he was. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he hath recompensed me. For I've kept the ways of the Lord, and have not done wickedly, and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his judgments were before me, and I did not put away his statutes from me. I was also upright before him, and kept myself from mine iniquity. Therefore hath the Lord recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his eyesight. Now we know David wasn't perfect, but he tried to live a good life, and attributed his success from God somewhat to those decisions he'd made. And then he sings about the righteous nature of God. With the merciful, thou wilt show thyself merciful. With an upright man, thou wilt show thyself upright. With the pure, thou wilt show thyself pure. With the froward, thou wilt show thyself froward. For thou wilt save the afflicted people, will bring down high looks. And then David takes the offensive. And God is with him, and he takes the battle to the enemy. For thou wilt light my candle. I want to stop right there. You remember when they said, David, you can't go out anymore to battle lest the light of Israel go out. See, they understood the importance of David to their kingdom. We can't let anything happen to you, David. You'll stay home and keep that candle burning while we'll go out and fight these battles for you. And that's the language David uses here when he says, "For thou wilt light my candle. The Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. For by thee have I run through a troop. And by my God have I leaped over a wall. As for God, His way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in Him. For who is God save the Lord? And who is a rock save our God? It is God that girdeth me with strength and maketh my way perfect. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet and setteth me upon my high places. He teacheth my hands to war, so that a bow of steel is broken in mine arms. Thou hast also given me the shield of thy salvation, and thy right hand hath holden me up, and thy gentleness hath made me great. Thou hast enlarged my steps under me, that my feet did not slip. I have pursued my enemies and overtaken them. Neither did I turn again till they were consumed. I have wounded them that they were not able to rise. They're fallen under my feet. For thou hast girded me with strength unto the battle. Thou hast subdued under me those that rose up against me. Thou hast also given me the necks of mine enemies, that I might destroy them that hate me. They cried, but there was none to save them, even to the Lord. But He answered them not. You remember when David cried out when he was in danger, the Lord came down and took care of him, didn't take care of them when they cried. See the contrast there from the first of the psalm here as we get toward the last? Then did I beat them small as the dust before the wind. I did cast them out as dirt in the streets. And it's because of God's help in David's conquest he was able to reign over his enemies. Beginning in verse 43, Thou hast delivered me from the strivings of the people. Thou hast made me the head of the heathen. A people whom I have not known shall serve me. As soon as they hear me, they shall obey me. The strangers shall submit themselves unto me. The strangers shall fade away and be afraid out of their close places. And then he brings his song to a close with more words of praise. The Lord liveth, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. It is God that avengeth me, and subdueth the people under me. He delivereth me from mine enemies. Yea, Thou liftest me up above those that rise up against me. Thou hast delivered me from the violent man. Therefore will I give thanks unto Thee, O Lord, among the heathen, and sing Thy praises unto Thy name. Great deliverance giveth He to His king, and showeth mercy to His anointed, to David and to his seed forevermore. Isn't that a beautiful song? Now, look at that last verse. Great deliverance giveth He to His king, and showeth mercy to His anointed. You see that word anointed? You know what that word is in the Hebrew? Untranslated, what the Hebrew would say when he came to this word anointed is Messiah. That's the meaning of the word. In the New Testament, the word is Christ. The Greek word Christ and the Hebrew word Messiah mean the English word anointed. Is this a messianic psalm? Well, I want to show you that it is. Maybe not in full, but in part. There's messianic hopes within this psalm. There's going to be a greater king than David. He's going to be the Christ. He'll be the anointed. That's why it says to David, into his seed forevermore. The seed of David will be the anointed. And that's how the New Testament begins. Matthew chapter 1 and verse 1. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That's Jesus, the anointed. The seed of David. In the opening words of this psalm, he said, God is my God, my strength, in whom I will trust. See there where it says, in whom I will trust. Now we turn over the book of Hebrews, and here's what we find. Hebrews 9 through 13. We see Jesus, who is made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. For it became him for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, in bringing many sons unto glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings. For both he that sanctifieth and they who are sanctified are all of one. For which cause he's not ashamed to call them brethren, saying, I'll declare thy name unto my brethren. In the midst of the church will I sing praises unto thee. And again, I will put my trust in him. Well, where does it say I will put my trust in him? Well, actually it's several places, but one of those places there is in Psalm 18, right there at the very beginning, in whom I will put my trust. And then in Psalm 18, 19, and 20, David, in talking about his deliverance, he delivered me because he delighted in me. The Lord reward me according to my righteousness. Who could say that better than Jesus? And we read several times, 5 times in the New Testament, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And at the cross, as he's dying on the cross, those who are crucifying come up to him, mocking him, and they almost quote this psalm. They say in Matthew 27:43, he trusted in God, let him deliver him now, if he will have him. For he said, I am the Son of God. But the one verse that really nails this down is Psalm 18, 46 through 50. This is actually verse 49. Therefore I will give thanks unto thee, O Lord, among the heathen, and sing praises unto thy name. Now the heathen there, see, that's the Gentiles. The Gentiles. The gospel of Christ goes into all the world, and it goes into the Gentiles, and the Gentiles come and praise him. And that verse is quoted in that very context in the book of Romans, chapter 15, 4 through 9. But whatsoever things are written aforetime are written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. Now skip on down a little. Now I say that Jesus Christ was a minister of the circumcision for the truth of God, and to confirm the promises made unto the fathers, and that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy, as it is written, for this cause I will confess thee among the Gentiles, and sing unto thy name. Look at your marginal reference, if you would. Psalm 18, 49. David came here to do spiritual battle. He's not an earthly king like David, shedding the blood of man, but he came to do spiritual battle with the forces of evil, and he trusted in God, and God delivered him. They thought they had him. They thought he was dead. They didn't even break his legs. They put a spear in his side, and out came forth blood and water, and they took him over to a tomb and sealed it up and put a guard around it. Boy, that ends that, doesn't it? Until he rose from the dead and took the offensive and sent his apostles into all the world preaching the gospel of salvation. Well, he's the Messiah. He's the King. He's the anointed one. David is but an earthly type of a spiritual Christ. And he trusted God, and he delivered him. And that's what we need to do. Now, we can make a choice. We can fight against him and face sure defeat. Or we can serve him as a servant and be welcomed into his kingdom. We need to trust him. Like we sing that song, Trust and Obey. And if you want to put your trust in the Lord, don't just think you can just do some mental thing to do it. You do it the way the Bible teaches us to do it. You're baptized into Jesus Christ. And you rise to walk in that new life. Serve him faithfully all the days of your life. And he delivers you. If you need to do that this morning, then do it while we stand and sing this invitation song.